What's up, guys? I am actually in the van today. I'm just prepping the space for me to be ready to move back in when it's time to move back in. And so, I've been working at that for most of the day. I got some project life going on back there. I should have a video out tomorrow about some stuff, but I thought it was about time for a poll response video. I didn't really get a lot of interactivity with this question. Um, but yeah, I always do a poll response video. So let's go ahead and pull up the results and take a look at what's going on here. So the last question that I asked in a poll, it's not the last, I actually have a current poll up, but this one was about if you are planning a van build, what's the most intimidating part of a DIY van build to you? Plumbing got 10%, electrical, including but not limited to solar installation, even though I think solar was the main reason this got such a high vote, was 63%. Temperature control was only 15. Woodworking and cabinetry was even lower at 7, and other at 6. I think people are absolutely underestimating how hard woodworking is. But I think the thing about woodworking, carpentry, cabinetry, all of that is it doesn't feel like it's something that's going to kill you. Like if you mess up at most, you've miscut a piece of wood. So it's not that it isn't hard, and I'm glad I actually phrased this as intimidating, as it's a thing that if you mess it up, it's probably not going to kill you. On the list of things here, it's not going to kill you, so it doesn't shock me that we got 7% on that, and most people feel comfortable at least trying to attempt that on their own, I think. Plumbing got 10%. And I guess if you're just talking about a simple sink, they really aren't that hard from what I've seen. I've never personally installed a sink. But I guess most people feel fairly comfortable with their ability to have some sort of running water system in their van. And honestly, you can do something as simple as a pump sink, and also, again, something you can skip. Like a lot of people just get water containers with a spout on the front and let gravity be their plumbing. So maybe that's part of the reason. I think a shower is kind of complicated, depending on the size of your vehicle and other factors, and the fact that that's literally running water inside of a vehicle. So I think a shower is much more complicated than it looks. Sinks are a little more simpler. I mean, technically, you're only running something into to something that's bowl size, and there's a lot of ways to have a quote unquote sink. It's much harder to have a shower, and I'm not just talking about space concerns. But also there's also a lot of stuff out there that are solutions for showers. There's having a bag outside your van. There's small little systems you can get. So I guess that one is kind of less intimidating for people. Really, you just need a way to have water and run it up through something and have it fall down. And I guess that doesn't really intimidate people that much. But solar and electrical really intimidates people, and I think it's the same thing that intimidated me, and that was, if I mess up, I don't want to burn down the van. And that is a legitimate fear, I think. The funny thing is, now on the back end, I think it's the thing that bothers me the least, because I have discovered what a horrible carpenter I am. And the only reason my storage is what it is because I bought stuff already built and adapted it. I bought home furnishings and adapted it to the van. Because I quickly discovered woodworking is not something I'm talented at, and I definitely could not cut and build stuff myself. But the danger of messing up was so much less. Okay, that's me going on and on. Let's go ahead and scroll through what some of you guys had to say. And so the first thing we're going to attack, of course, is exactly what I said. Rhonda said it herself. Definitely electrical. One wrong move and it's barbecue time. Frankie says, of all the builds I've watched, it's the solar that looks confusing, and it can be really, really confusing. The electrical, far away, the electrical, and then the temperature control. And it's interesting how many people aren't as intimidated by the temperature control thing, because temperature control becomes a big deal in the van depending on where you are. If you're planning to travel, you need to know if you want to be prepared to face anything along the way, or plan your trip around avoiding temperatures that you can't deal with. If your van isn't set up that you can cool yourself if it gets too hot, you don't want to be in a place that's too hot. If your van isn't set up to warm itself when the temperature gets too cool, you don't want to be in a place that gets too cold. And so there are people who are like, you know what? I don't plan to ever deal with cold weather. And so they build their van with no concern of dealing with a lot of cold weather. That doesn't mean they won't have a heater, but they know like extreme cold is not an issue. So like they're willing to go with a simple solution on the occasion that they have to deal with a little bit of cold. And on the flip side, there are places that get extremely hot and they might have a milder winter where the heat isn't so bad, but it's not cold. And so like, how many people don't understand sort of the concept of the snowbird? But if you're like, I have to be in the hot environment, like I can't avoid it. I need to build my van around the fact that I will experience extreme heat, which is why I think there's a lot of concerns about AC. That can be a big deal. Air conditioners need a lot of power. And depending on your situation, if you need to stealth camp a lot or not, your ability to deal with extreme heat will need to be something that you're considering, because both extremes are bad. Like both extremes are bad. The word extreme is important here, guys. All right, let's keep scrolling through these comments. All right, so electrical and woodworking. Adrian Hollyfield is did I say that right? Hopefully I did. Is one of the few people who was like, yeah, woodworking is a thing. It's intimidating. It's not so much dangerous because you can tell right away when you fail at the woodworking, but it's still intimidating. People have very big ideas about how they're going to build their van, and they quickly find out how difficult some of those ideas are. This actually popped up a lot. I had a few people say this. I choose electrical, but I was wishing for an option of all the above. I'm not the handiest of persons around. LOL. And here's somebody else who was like, can I say all of the above? LOL. Yeah, it can all be intimidating, which is why there are people who'd rather just buy something already built, rather that's a previously owned custom van or a class B. There's a reason some people are like, you know what, I just want to buy something and drive it away. I don't want to deal with any of the building. It's all intimidating. And honestly, if I could have made that choice, I would have explored my options more, even though honestly, I hate the layouts of most class Bs. There's almost too much in them. But at the same time, I don't know that even if I got something that was standing height, I don't know that I on my own would ever be able to build something like really gorgeous. It would be livable. It would be nice for me. I can live on very little and be happy. But yeah, I don't know that it'd ever be the dream in my head, as it were. Here's another one for temperature control. Temperature control, no heater and no AC sucks. Moved out to Missouri where one half of the week is in the high 70s and the other part is in the low 40s for highs. And again, this is where you really have to examine where you're going to be in your van. But at the same time, you can get surprised. Places that are generally, warm can still have really cold nights where you need a heater. places, the extremes can come out of nowhere, even in places where you don't expect it. And also, once you're in a van and you realize your van isn't prepped for the situation that you're in, it's always a nightmare. I mean, but I think also that's part of life. This one is the only one that really described an other, and it was one I didn't think about, and that was a decent locking system. And I know security is a high concern for a lot of people. A lot of people feel like a van is definitely a less secure environment than a traditional home as far as locking. And yeah, that's a legitimate fear. I mean, people have had, there are people who walk around pulling on doors of vehicles hoping to find an accidentally unlocked door. There are obviously people, especially if you get a cargo van and convert it, even if they don't think you're in there, it's a cargo van. It could be a construction guy's van, a plumber's van, an electrical guy's van, which could have expensive tools or equipment that can be resold. So yeah, a decent locking system is important. I never thought of that as part of the build, but that's a good other, and there weren't really a lot of others, so I was wondering what was in that 6%, and there we go. There's something that might have been in that 6%. And there's a very detailed comment, a lot to read, but Cat and Dogs on Wheels says, I'm in the middle of a bus build. My most intimidating project is installing my wood burning heat and chimney. Intimidated enough to hire a professional to do it, saving for that. The most intimidating part that I will be doing myself is sanding and painting the exterior. I'm in Washington, and the exterior has to be painted before I can drive it on the road. I sidestep the intimidation of electrical with portable solar panels, solar generators, and power banks. Easy peasy. My brother-in-law will help me with the backup and passenger side camera installation. Other than that, I'm doing it all myself. It's been very gratifying and rewarding doing the build myself. A 65-year-old solo female. Well, not solo. I have my dogs, and they're great companions and supervisors. Okay, so that was a longer comment, but I think there's a lot good in this, in that she says the most intimidating project is installing the wood burning heat and chimney, and immediately recognizing that this is something wanted, but not something that could be accomplished individually. She is saving for a professional to come do a job that she trusts will be done more safely with the professional. And this is something I advise. Don't get me wrong. I think there is a ton of value, and she says this at the end of her comment, in doing it yourself. You will feel so accomplished when you teach yourself something you weren't able to do before, and it is empowering. But it's also good to recognize when it's not something you feel comfortable doing. By the time I installed my solar system, I felt comfortable with the fact that, one, it was small enough that my risk of anything majorly electrical going wrong was really low, and two, that I had a strong enough grasp of basic concepts to complete the project. If you never reach that point, I would say don't do it without help. And maybe you can't afford a professional, but find a message board, find a Facebook group, say, I live in this state. If anybody can help me, do this thing that I'm afraid to do, please do. I sidestepped the intimidation of electrical with portable solar panels, solar generators, and power banks. Honestly, as far as the portable solar panels, if you can find somebody to install panels, you're at almost any solar generator can still be hooked to installed panels. In fact, before I got my batteries, I had my solar panel hooked up to my little 200-watt Maxo Bluetti. So just know you can still skip building your own solar system and use attached panels so you don't have to pull them out. But if it's not a big deal for your situation, hey, keep up with the portable solar panels and backup and SAM. Now we're getting into stuff that's security. I didn't really mention security in my poll. And I guess that falls into the other category. So I've wondered if I had said explicitly security, which would have been locks, dash cams, etc. Then I could have covered that as well. I'm going to come back to that. I have a little sidestep about electricity. So yeah, so it sounds like, yes, the build is being done by Solo, but at the same time, it's like, I'm okay with admitting when I need help, whether that's with dash cams or heat and chimney. And I think this is a good way to approach a van build. If there's something you want, but you're not confident you can accomplish it, I think it's perfectly okay to pay someone else to do it. There's this pride in saying self-built van, but if you get into a lot of those stories, a lot of those people had help. They either had somebody, they could get for free, or they had a friend, or they paid for it. And getting help is okay. It doesn't take away the value of you building your own van if it's to your design, but somebody else is helping you with it. And I think it's important to remember, and that's why I wanted to end on that comment, that self-built doesn't necessarily have to mean you did everything yourself. It means you had specifications that you set up and you move toward those specifications, even if it meant every once in a while you had to get some help. Now, if you drive it to a shop, even if you drew out the plans, it's not a self-built van. It's that company's built van because, you drove it to a shop, you paid them to build it, and then you left and came back. But honestly, if you have the money for that, like if I could get my perfect size vehicle and hire somebody to build it to my specifications, like if I was rolling in that dough, I'm okay with that. And it's also okay to be intimidated by some part of your van build and seek help in whatever way is available to you. Now, some of us can't pay for it. Like there's been no point where I'm like, oh, I could afford to pay somebody to do this. And also there's no real standards for building a van. It's just something people are making up, honestly, as they go along. As similar as a lot of these van layouts are, like so many of these standing height vans are the exact same layout, but also there's only so many places you can place things in a van, depending on size. There's only so many options you have for how you get everything you need to live in it in there, which is why a lot of the layouts just end up looking kind of similar. But yeah. So that was an interesting poll. I was shocked at the low comment response on it. Maybe because it was pretty direct on what it was asking, because sometimes I get a lot of really cool comments. The comments were kind of low on this one, but I like doing these poll response videos and just feeling out the community and seeing what you guys have to say on these subjects, and it gives me something to talk to you guys about. And so I like that. And so that's the end of this video for now. If you have anything else to say about this about this poll, feel free to drop that in the comments here. Love to hear what's the most intimidating thing for you and why. And if you built a van, is the thing you thought would be the hardest actually the hardest thing? Like, did it change after having done it? Like maybe you went in thinking solar was going to be the hardest and it turned out building like drawers was the hardest. Or maybe you thought, plumbing your sink was going to be the hardest and that turned out to be really easy, but something else turned out to be harder. So I'd love to hear if anybody had sort of a change through the experience of building a van. But that is officially the end of this video. See you in the next one.